Karen Thompson peered through her delicate lace curtains at the lively gathering unfolding right next door on the sun-dappled Elmwood Lane, her lips tightening into a thin line of unmistakable disapproval as she took in the scene that seemed so utterly out of place in her meticulously curated world of suburban perfection, where every lawn was manicured to precision and every home exuded an air of quiet affluence that she had come to expect and demand after more than a decade of residence in the upscale enclave of Oakwood, a place she often boasted about in her social circles as the epitome of refined living, far removed from the chaos of urban sprawl or anything that might disrupt the serene harmony she cherished so deeply. The elegant setup before her eyes featured pristine white tents, billowing gently in the warm afternoon breeze like sails on a calm sea, crystal glasses arranged on linen-covered tables that caught the sunlight and twinkled like distant stars, and a sophisticated jazz quartet positioned discreetly in the corner, their instruments producing soft, melodic notes that floated through the air with an understated grace, creating an atmosphere of celebration that should have been joyous but to Karen appeared as nothing short of a blatant eyesore, a chaotic intrusion threatening to shatter the pristine bubble she had built around her life, her home, and her community. The guests, numbering around 50 in total, were impeccably dressed in sharp, tailored suits for the men and flowing, elegant gowns for the women, their laughter mingling with the music as they chatted animatedly and mingled with the ease of old friends and family reunited for a special occasion. But through the lens of Karen's deeply ingrained biases, she saw not the warmth of human connection, but only whispers of outsiders who, in her mind, simply did not belong in this neighborhood. Their presence an affront to the high standards she prided herself on upholding, standards that she enforced not just in her personal life, but also through her successful catering company, Thompson Elegance, which specialized in handling upscale events for the local elite, including prestigious city functions that brought in substantial revenue and reinforced her status as a pillar of the community. Though, ironically, this very wedding she now despised could have been one of her own catered affairs, had circumstances been different. The bride, Elena Ramirez, a highly accomplished architect whose designs had graced several notable buildings in the region, stood at the center of it all, clutching her exquisite bouquet of fresh lilies that symbolized purity and new beginnings, her ivory gown cascading around her like a waterfall of silk, her face radiant with anticipation, despite the subtle undercurrent of tension that Karen's watchful gaze seemed to inject into the air, while the groom, Marcus Johnson, adjusted his sleek silk tie with a steady hand, his face beaming with unbridled joy that lit up his features, exuding a quiet confidence that hinted at depths far beyond what met the eye. For little did Karen realize in her mounting irritation that Marcus was far more than just an ordinary neighbor. He was in fact the very heartbeat of Oakwood, a figure whose influence extended into the corridors of power and decision-making that shaped the town's daily life. Though, for now, he remained composed, his role hidden beneath the veneer of a happy groom on his wedding day. As the ceremony time drew nearer, with the officiant preparing notes and guests settling into their seats, Karen's frustration, which had been simmering like a pot left too long on the stove, finally boiled over in a dramatic outburst that would set the stage for an unforgettable confrontation, propelling her across the invisible boundary of her property line and straight into the heart of the event, where she boldly snatched the delicate bouquet right from the small hands of a young flower girl, a wide-eyed 7-year-old niece named Lila, whose innocent excitement turned to confusion as the flowers were wrenched away and tossed it carelessly aside into the neatly trimmed grass, declaring in a voice that cut through the music like a sharp knife, "Take this mess elsewhere before I report you all for trespassing and whatever other violations I can think of." Her words laced with venom that echoed across the yard, drawing gasps from the assembled crowd as spit inadvertently flecked onto the groom's polished shoes when she leaned in uncomfortably close to his face, her breath hot with anger, while Marcus stood firm like a rock amidst a storm, his jaw set in determination but his eyes reflecting a measured restraint that spoke volumes about his character, refusing to escalate the situation prematurely. and Elena, ever the picture of grace under pressure, held her composure admirably, whispering soft reassurances to the shaken guests around her, particularly the children who looked on with wide eyes, unsure how to process the sudden hostility intruding on what should have been a day of pure celebration. The 50 attendees, a mix of family, friends, and colleagues from various walks of life, froze in collective shock as Karen, undeterred by the stunned silence, proceeded to overturn a beautifully arranged floral centerpiece on one of the nearby tables, sending petals scattering across the lawn like misguided confetti in a scene gone horribly wrong, the vibrant colors contrasting sharply with the growing tension. "You think you can bring this kind of over-the-top spectacle right here into our peaceful neighborhood? Not in my backyard. Not while I'm here to protect what we've built." She jabbed a accusatory finger at the entire setup, her manicured nails flashing in the sunlight like tiny daggers, emphasizing each word with a flourish that betrayed her sense of entitlement, while Marcus subtly touched his engraved watch, a personal emblem of his esteemed position that glinted unnoticed in the chaos, a small but significant detail that hinted at the power he held in reserve, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Fuming with a rage that seemed disproportionate to the occasion, Karen whipped out her smartphone and dialed emergency services without a second thought, her voice trembling with manufactured urgency as she spoke into the receiver. 911, yes, there's an unauthorized party right here on Elmwood Lane that's completely disrupting the peace of our entire neighborhood. Loud noises blaring from their music setup, suspicious crowds milling about blocking driveways and sidewalks, and probably unlicensed vendors operating without any regard for regulations or safety. The dispatcher on the other end, maintaining a professional calm that contrasted starkly with Karen's escalating hysteria, asked for more specific details to assess the situation accurately, but Karen barreled on with her rant, elaborating on declining property values that we've all worked so hard to maintain and unwanted elements infiltrating our safe, upscale community, her words dripping with implications that went beyond mere noise complaints and delved into deeper prejudices she perhaps didn't even fully acknowledge in herself, pacing back and forth on her immaculate driveway like a sentinel guarding her territory. She simultaneously launched a live stream on the local community app that connected all the residents of Oakwood, broadcasting her tirade to her modest following of 35 neighbors who often tuned in for her updates on HOA matters and local gossip, declaring passionately into the camera, "I'm defending our serene streets from this blatant takeover. Look at this, everyone. We can't let this slide if we want to keep Oakwood the way it should be." And almost immediately, comments began to trickle in from her audience, some supportive like, "Enforce the rules before it's too late," and HOA alert, "This needs immediate action," while others remained silent, perhaps sensing the overreach but not yet willing to voice dissent. Meanwhile, amidst the growing commotion, a quick-thinking teenage guest, Elena's sharp-witted cousin Mia, who was no stranger to social media trends, discreetly started her own live stream on a popular video-sharing app from behind a cluster of decorative shrubs, captioning it with a mix of outrage and incredulity. "Y'all have to watch this entitled woman straight up crashing our family wedding like she owns the place," and the views began to climb steadily as the algorithm picked up on the drama, starting at 15, then jumping to 40, 65, and beyond. With words spreading like wildfire through interconnected youth networks that operated at a speed far surpassing Karen's more traditional complaints, turning what was a local dispute into the beginnings of a viral sensation that would soon draw eyes from far beyond the confines of Oakwood. The emergency dispatcher, after gathering what details they could from Karen's breathless account, promised that officers would arrive on the scene in approximately 10 minutes to investigate and restore order, a response that filled Karen with a smug sense of triumph as she ended the call and turned back to the wedding party with a victorious smirk, proclaiming loudly for all to hear and for her live stream audience to capture time's up for this ridiculous fiasco. "The authorities are on their way, and you'll all have to pack up and leave before things get even messier." But Marcus, ever the voice of reason in the midst of turmoil, reached into the inner pocket of his suit jacket and produced a thick folder brimming with official documents, holding it out toward her with a calm demeanor that belied the intensity of the moment. "Everything here is fully permitted and above board, ma'am. Perhaps we can discuss this calmly like neighbors and resolve any misunderstandings without further disruption." His tone steady and professional, aiming to de-escalate rather than confront. She scoffed dismissively, waving the folder away as if it were inconsequential trash. "Fake papers from who knows where, probably printed off some shady website. I won't be fooled by that, not when our community's integrity is at stake." Her refusal to even glance at the evidence only fueling the growing divide. As the situation intensified, curious neighbors began to emerge from their nearby homes, drawn by the raised voices and the unusual activity on what was typically a quiet street. With Mr. Hargrove clutching his smartphone equipped with a noise monitoring app that he often used to police minor infractions, and Mrs. Ellis brandishing a stack of HOA violation forms she kept on hand for just such occasions, echoing Karen's sentiments with their own complaints like, "This is blocking access to driveways and creating unnecessary hazards, and we have ordinances against this sort of thing for a reason." A small child among the wedding guests, perhaps Marcus's young nephew, tugged innocently at his uncle's sleeve amid the confusion, looking up with big eyes and asking in a whisper, "Why is she so mad at us, Uncle M?" To which Marcus knelt down to the boy's level, his voice gentle and reassuring despite the chaos swirling around them. "Some folks just fear what they don't understand, kiddo, but we'll sort it out with kindness and facts, okay?" A moment of tenderness that stood in stark contrast to the hostility. Undeterred and perhaps emboldened by the arrival of her allies, Karen escalated her accusations further, turning her attention to the professional catering staff who were calmly continuing their duties despite the interruption, demanding loudly, "Show your papers. All of you prove you have the right to be here operating in this neighborhood." Her stream now hitting 150 views as more locals tuned in, some sharing the link in group chats and amplifying the reach. Marcus's aunt, a respected retired educator who had dedicated decades of her life to teaching in Oakwood schools and fostering community ties, approached slowly with a walker, her presence carrying an air of quiet authority earned through years of service. Addressing Karen directly, "This is how we build bonds and strengthen our neighborhood, dear, by coming together in celebration rather than tearing apart." But Karen, too wrapped up in her own narrative, dismissed the elderly woman with a curt wave. "You don't get the changes happening here. I do so their humans. The way things are shifting and threatening what we've all worked for. Someone has to stand up," her words revealing more about her fears than any actual threat posed by the wedding. In the distance, the faint wail of sirens began to grow louder, signaling the imminent arrival of the authorities she had summoned, while Marcus glanced at his watch once more, noting how the ceremony time was fast approaching and the joyous event they had planned so carefully was now hanging by a thread, the storm of conflict brewing with increasing intensity. Yet unbeknownst to Karen and the gathering onlookers, a dramatic twist was on the horizon that would upend everything she thought she knew, flipping the script in ways that would leave her reeling and the community forever changed by the revelations to come, as the layers of assumption peeled away to expose the truth beneath, turning a simple neighborhood dispute into a profound lesson on prejudice, power, and the unexpected connections that bind us all in ways we often fail to see until it's too late. The patrol cars pulled up to the curb on Elmwood Lane with their lights flashing, but sirens silenced, casting elongated shadows across the disrupted wedding celebration that had transformed from a picture of elegance into a tableau of tense anticipation as Officers Lee and Patel stepped out of their vehicles with the practiced efficiency of seasoned professionals who had responded to countless neighborhood calls over the years, their uniforms crisp and their expressions neutral as they scanned the scene before them, taking in the neatly arranged rows of white folding chairs under the tents, the professional servers circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvre that smelled of fresh herbs and gourmet sophistication, and the jazz quartet that had paused their performance mid-note, their instruments now resting silently as the musicians exchanged uneasy glances amid the growing crowd. Karen Thompson, her face flushed with a mix of righteous indignation and barely contained excitement at the arrival of reinforcements, rushed forward toward the officers like a whirlwind of determination, her smartphone held aloft, as if it were a badge of authority, still broadcasting her live stream to an audience that had swelled beyond her wildest expectations. Finally, "Thank goodness you're here. These people have turned our quiet street into a total circus, violating every possible rule from noise ordinances to crowd control, and I've got it all documented right here." Her voice pitching higher with each word, laced with the kind of manufactured urgency that often accompanied such complaints, as she thrust her phone screen toward Officer Lee, displaying the ongoing feed where comments were pouring in faster than she could read them, some cheering her on with emojis of fists and American flags, others beginning to question the intensity of her reaction, with skeptical remarks like, "This looks like a nice wedding. Chill out." Officer Lee, a veteran with 2 decades on the force who had seen everything from petty disputes to more serious altercations in suburbs like Oakwood, raised a hand to steady the situation while his eyes methodically surveyed the setup, noting how the white linens on the tables remained spotless. The catering staff maintained their composure with trays balanced perfectly, and the soft background chatter among guests was hardly the loud noises described in the dispatch call. "This appears to be a standard wedding event." "Ma'am, what exactly is the nature of the disturbance you're reporting?" he asked in a measured tone that aimed to de-escalate. But Karen, undeterred and perhaps fueled by the virtual validation from her stream, which now boasted over 400 viewers tuning in from local networks and beyond, as shares began to multiply, pressed on with her accusations. "It's an outright invasion of our peaceful community. Look at this feed, over 400 people watching live as I expose how they've disregarded all standards, blocking streets, blasting music, and bringing in who knows what kind of unlicensed operations that could tank our property values overnight." Behind her, the social media storm was intensifying in ways she couldn't yet fully grasp, with Mia's rival live feed on the popular app exploding to 1,200 viewers in mere minutes, the comments section a frenzy of outrage and amusement as users typed furiously, "She's completely out of line. This is straight-up harassment." And, "This is going viral. Someone tagged the news poor couple just trying to get married," while short video clips began circulating on other platforms, tagged with hashtags like #Oakwood drama and #wedding interruption that were starting to trend locally, drawing in curious onlookers from neighboring towns who shared and reposted with their own takes, turning the personal conflict into a spectacle of public judgment. Marcus Johnson, maintaining his unruffled poise that had served him well in countless high-stakes situations unseen by most, approached the officers with his hands visibly open and non-threatening, a gesture of transparency that spoke to his innate understanding of how such encounters could spiral if mishandled. "Officers, I apologize for any confusion this may have caused. Everything about this event is properly documented and permitted through the appropriate channels, and I'd be happy to provide the paperwork right now to clear things up," he said evenly, extending the thick folder of documents he had retrieved earlier. Its pages filled with official stamps, signatures, and detailed approvals that outlined every aspect from noise allowances to parking arrangements. Karen, spotting the exchange, lunged forward and attempted to grab the folder from his hands, her eyes narrowing as she skimmed the top page with frantic disbelief. "Permitted? By whom? Some buddy system at the town hall. These could be completely forged for all we know, and I'm not standing by while our neighborhood gets overrun." Her dismissal ringing out for her audience, but Officer Patel, who had been quietly radioing back to headquarters for a quick verification on the permits, using the details provided in the dispatch notes, paused as his radio crackled with a response that made his posture shift subtly, his gaze flicking back to Marcus with a flicker of recognition that hinted at something deeper, something that went beyond the surface of this apparent domestic squabble. As the confrontation unfolded, more neighbors trickled out from their homes along Elmwood Lane, some drawn by the flashing lights and raised voices, others alerted by the buzzing notifications from the community app where Karen's post was gaining traction, with Mr. Hargrove activating his noise monitoring app and announcing triumphantly, "Current levels at 55 decibels. Wait, that's actually under the daytime limit for residential areas," a fact that momentarily deflated the supportive murmurs from Mrs. Ellis and a few others who had clustered nearby with their own phones recording, though Karen ignored the data entirely, waving it off as irrelevant. Numbers on an app don't capture the real issue here. It's about the overall drop in standards, the way this kind of event invites all sorts of problems we don't need in Oakwood. The tension thickened as news vans from local stations began rounding the corner, their antennas extending like curious periscopes, tipped off by the rapid spread of social media buzz that had flagged the hashtags as a potential story of neighborhood drama gone awry, with reporter Alex Rivera from Channel 5 jumping out first with her microphone in hand and cameraman in tow. Her sharp instincts honing in on Karen as the apparent instigator. "Ma'am, Alex Rivera, with Channel 5, can you explain the situation here for our viewers?" To which Karen, smoothing her blouse and adjusting her posture for the camera, responded with renewed vigor, posing as the defender of community values. "Absolutely. I'm here protecting our upscale neighborhood from this disruptive event that's shown total disregard for our rules. Loud music, echoing everywhere, traffic blocked by all these vehicles, and a complete lack of respect for the standards we all pay premium taxes to uphold." Her words captured live as her personal stream's audience ballooned to 1,800, merging with the professional broadcast and amplifying the reach exponentially. While comments across platforms poured in even faster, a mix of support from like-minded locals and growing backlash from broader audiences who saw the underlying tones in her complaints. Marcus checked his engraved watch discreetly, noting how the ceremony was now significantly delayed, the jazz quartet still on hold and the guests shifting uncomfortably in their seats, with Elena fighting back subtle signs of distress as she comforted Lila, the flower girl, whose earlier excitement had dimmed. Undaunted, Karen planted herself defiantly in front of the decorative wedding arch adorned with fresh vines and blooms, crossing her arms like a human barricade. "You're not continuing with any of this until everything's been properly cleared by the authorities. No way am I letting this proceed on my watch." Her proclamation met with a firm warning from Officer Lee, who stepped forward with authority. "Ma'am, you need to step back immediately. Interfering with a legally permitted event could lead to charges of your own." But even as the words hung in the air, the quartet tentatively resumed a soft melody in the background, creating a bizarre juxtaposition of serene music against the escalating verbal standoff that had everyone on edge. In a move that would shift the entire dynamic irrevocably, Marcus slowly removed his tailored suit jacket, folding it carefully over one arm to reveal the custom dress shirt beneath, its collar embroidered with a faint but unmistakable city emblem that caught the waning afternoon light. His every action deliberate and imbued with a quiet authority that commanded attention without a single raised word. As he reached into an inner pocket and withdrew a leather wallet, extracting an official identification card that he extended toward Officer Patel with the confidence of someone long accustomed to such moments of revelation. Patel took the card, his eyes scanning it briefly before his entire demeanor transformed. He straightened his back with military precision, shoulders squaring as he handed it back with deference. "Good day, Your Honor," he said clearly and audibly, the words slicing through the chatter like a clarion call, silencing the immediate crowd and sending a ripple of shock through the assembled neighbors, guests, and even the news crew who pivoted their cameras instinctively. Karen froze in place, her triumphant expression crumbling into one of utter bewilderment as the implications dawned, her phone nearly slipping from her grasp while her live stream erupted into chaos with over 3,500 viewers now engaged. The comment section, a torrent of exclamations. "Wait, did he say, Your Honor? Is that the mayor? And oh snap, she just called the cops on the actual mayor. This is the plot twist of the year." With screenshots and clips being shared at lightning speed. Pushing hashtags like #MayorWeddingGoneWrong, into trending status across multiple platforms. The revelation detonated like a verbal grenade, with gasps echoing from the wedding party and onlookers alike, Karen stammering incoherently, "You're... what? That can't be right. You're just... you live here like everyone else?" Her world, tilting as fragments of past interactions, flooded back the polite waves across the fence. The helpful hand with her overgrown hedge last season, the anonymous donations to local causes that bore a familiar name on the lists. Marcus, his voice steady as ever, replied evenly without a trace of gloating, "I'm Marcus Johnson, Mayor of Oakwood. Ma'am, we've actually crossed paths at several council meetings where you've spoken on topics like zoning and community events, a fact that now hung in the air like an unspoken indictment, exposing the depth of her assumptions and the irony of her complaints against someone who literally oversaw the very standards she claimed to defend." The media frenzy intensified as reporter Rivera pushed forward, her microphone extended. "Mayor Johnson, we had no idea this was your personal event. Care to comment on the disruption?" To which Marcus nodded professionally. "It was intended as a quiet family celebration in our own neighborhood, but I appreciate the officer's prompt response to a concerned citizen's call, his words gracious, even as Officers Lee and Patel offered immediate apologies for the inconvenience, with Patel adding, "Sir, we were just following protocol. Everything checks out on our end." Marcus's best man, a distinguished fire chief in full dress uniform who had been standing sentinel nearby, stepped forward to corroborate. Removing his hat respectfully, "I can verify His Honor's identity without question. I've served alongside him on emergency response committees for years," his presence adding another layer of institutional weight that made Karen's position increasingly untenable. As the truth settled in, Karen's smartphone buzzed incessantly with incoming notifications calls from her business line at Thompson Elegance, texts from concerned associates, and alerts from review sites where her catering company's online ratings began to plummet in real time, as viral viewers connected the dots through quick searches, identifying her as the owner whose services depended heavily on city contracts for events at parks, town halls, and festivals, deals worth millions annually that now teetered on the brink due to this very public meltdown. The unveiling had shattered her facade completely, leaving her isolated amid the crowd, as neighbors who had initially sided with her began to distance themselves, deleting their supportive comments and slipping back toward their homes, while the social media metrics painted a grim picture of her escalating downfall, with over 3,000 new one-star reviews flooding in, citing unprofessional behavior and biased attitudes, setting the stage for a reckoning that would extend far beyond this single afternoon, forcing Karen to confront the consequences of her actions in ways that would reshape not just her life but the fabric of Oakwood itself. As the layers of prejudice peeled away to reveal the interconnected realities beneath, turning what started as a simple complaint into a catalyst for profound change and self-examination that no one could have anticipated. In the immediate aftermath of the stunning revelation that had left Elmwood Lane buzzing with a mix of shock, whispers, and the relentless clicking of smartphone cameras capturing every lingering moment for posterity, Marcus Johnson adjusted his embroidered collar with the same deliberate calm that had carried him through the chaos, turning toward the assembled crowd now swollen with additional neighbors, media crews, and even a few passers-by drawn by the spectacle as he addressed them, not just as a groom reclaiming his wedding day, but as the mayor embodying the principles of fair governance that Oakwood prided itself on, his voice projecting clearly over the resumed soft strains of the jazz quartet that provided an oddly soothing underscore to the proceedings. "Ladies and gentlemen, since we've all gathered here in this unexpected way as members of our shared community, perhaps this is the perfect opportunity to examine the very standards and accountability measures that define us. Using facts and established protocols rather than assumptions, a statement that hung in the air like a pivot point, shifting the energy from confrontation to contemplation." While Karen Thompson stood rooted in her driveway, her face draining of color as the implications of his words sank in like slow dawning dread, realizing that her impulsive actions had not only exposed her personal biases, but also jeopardized the intricate web of professional ties that sustained her catering empire, Thompson Elegance, which relied heavily on lucrative city contracts for everything from park picnics to town hall galas, deals that totaled an impressive $1.8 million annually, and now teetered precariously under the scrutiny his revelation invited. Retrieving a sleek tablet from the wedding coordinator's nearby satchel, a device preloaded with municipal databases and real-time analytics that he often used in council meetings, Marcus tapped the screen with precision, pulling up verified data that illuminated the screen like digital evidence in a courtroom. Let's start with the basics. Our current noise level, as measured by Officer Patel's official equipment just moments ago, registers at a compliant 58 decibels, well below the residential weekend threshold of 75 decibels that allows for gatherings like this until late evening. A fact Officer Lee confirmed with a nod. Verified, Your Honor, no violations detected on that front, while the crowd listened in rapt silence, absorbing the methodical dismantling of Karen's complaints through irrefutable metrics rather than heated rhetoric. Continuing with the professorial tone of a leader educating his constituents, Marcus navigated to the permit records. This outdoor event permit was submitted through the standard channels at the Parks and Recreation Department well in advance, with the processing fee of $1, $950 covered in full, followed by a thorough fire safety inspection that earned commendations for our setup's adherence to all protocols, including clear egress paths and emergency access, details that Karen could not refute as she watched her own live stream still inexplicably running on her phone. Now, with viewer counts surpassing 2,000 fill with comments that turned increasingly against her, a digital tide shifting from sparse support to widespread condemnation as users pieced together the full context with phrases like, "She's attacking the mayor over nothing," and "This backfired so hard, karma in action," dominating the feed. Addressing Karen directly but with a neutrality that underscored his commitment to due process over personal vendetta, Marcus queried, "Miss Thompson, as a valued city contractor whose company has excelled in servicing our public spaces, you're undoubtedly familiar with the vendor conduct guidelines outlined in our municipal charter, correct?" To which she could only whisper a faint "Yes, Your Honor," her voice cracking under the weight of the moment as her stream's audience climbed to 2,400, documenting what felt like her professional unraveling in excruciating detail. Without pausing for dramatic effect, but rather building his case like a well-structured policy brief, Marcus displayed the relevant section on his tablet for the cameras to capture, quoting verbatim, "City Charter Article 14.2, 9 mandates that all vendors demonstrate unwavering respect for community diversity and engage in professional interactions free from any form of harassment or discriminatory conduct, with violations subject to tiered reviews that could result in probation, suspension, or full termination after appropriate hearings," a clause that now loomed over Karen like a contractual sword, especially as he detailed her firm's holdings. Thompson Elegance currently manages contracts for seasonal park events at $450,000 yearly, corporate town hall functions at $620, 000, community festival catering at $520,000, and specialized holiday setups at $210,000, impressive work that has enhanced our public gatherings, but work that must align with our core values of inclusivity and equity. The impact was palpable, with Karen's attorney, whom she had frantically texted during the revelation, later describing the scene as witnessing a masterful deconstruction via data-driven diplomacy, where each statistic landed not as an attack but as an inevitable consequence, highlighting how her afternoon outburst directly contravened the anti-bias pledges she had signed in her latest vendor renewal just the previous year, commitments that explicitly supported Oakwood's motto of harmony through diversity and had boosted her revenue by 28% through minority partner incentives, As social media analytics flashed across Marcus's screen, pulled from public dashboards that tracked trending topics, he noted the surge. In the past hour alone, our city hotline has fielded 500 formal complaints regarding this incident, with 312 calls to the non-discrimination line. And online, the hashtag number Karen Crashes Wedding has garnered 20,000 mentions, putting Oakwood's reputation as a welcoming suburb under national scrutiny from business councils and tourism boards alike, figures that painted a stark picture of reputational damage, while Karen's business Google rating nosedived to a dismal one. 3 stars amid a flood of over 3,000 fresh reviews lambasting her for overt prejudice and unfit conduct for a public contractor, a backlash amplified by the news crews who were now broadcasting live segments, framing the story as a cautionary tale of unchecked assumptions in modern America. Offering Karen a final olive branch wrapped in procedural fairness, Marcus suggested, "Miss Thompson, before we move to formal steps, would you care to review the recorded evidence of your statements today captured from 17 independent sources and viewed by roughly 15,000 people in real time regarding invasions and dropping standards that seem to target specific community members?" A question that prompted her desperate attempt at backpedaling. "Your Honor, I never intended anything divisive. It was all about maintaining order and values. My words were misconstrued in the heat of the moment." But Marcus, thoughtful as ever, countered gently, "Context is key, and in light of our updated vendor agreements from 2 years ago, which you endorsed and which emphasize unity and diversity, today's events raise valid questions about alignment, especially since your business has thrived on diversity-driven projects in multicultural districts that account for 35% of your portfolio." The reporter from Channel 5, Alex Rivera, interjected with a probing query that captured the broader implications. "Mayor Johnson, what potential outcomes could Miss Thompson's company face in this scenario?" To which Marcus explained with transparency, "Our process involves a 3-tier evaluation, an initial performance audit, a public hearing scheduled within 72 hours, and a comprehensive community impact assessment to ensure any decisions prioritize fairness, including considerations for her 28 employees and their families who contribute so much to Oakwood." Karen's phone rang off the hook with urgent calls from her business partner panicking over client cancellations, suppliers hedging bets, and even her staff seeking reassurances as industry whispers spread like ripples in a pond, faster than she could contain. Announcing the next steps with the authority of his office, Marcus declared, "A contractor review hearing will convene first thing in the council chambers, where Miss Thompson can present her perspective, and residents may offer testimony on vendor expectations. The session will be live-streamed for full transparency, inviting input from all who value our community's progress." In a plea born of dawning desperation, Karen interjected, "Your Honor, I offer a public apology for any poor phrasing. This doesn't reflect my genuine commitment to our diverse town," but Marcus's response was both measured and incisive. "True partnerships demand consistent actions that uphold our values, not apologies prompted by exposure. Sergeant, please compile a detailed incident report with all statements and footage for the city attorney's review." Even as he dismantled her defenses, Marcus emphasized equity. "Any resolution will weigh the broader effects on livelihoods, as municipal decisions should foster growth, not destruction, yet taxpayer funds cannot endorse behaviors at odds with our charter." The economic stakes were crystal clear without those city contracts. Thompson Elegance faced potential insolvency, as no amount of private gigs could offset the $1.8 million gap, a reality that hit Karen like successive waves. Another reporter, James Torres from Channel 8, which had just arrived amid the growing media swarm, asked Mayor, "How does this reflect on Oakwood's dedication to equality?" Prompting Marcus to affirm, "It shows our systems function effectively. Discrimination is addressed promptly. Vendors are held accountable, and leadership chooses principled paths over expedience. Karen's final appeal echoed weakly. I've built my life here for 15 years. Serving faithfully one lapse shouldn't erase it all. To which Marcus paused reflectively before replying, a single lapse implies isolation, but today's revelations suggest deeper misalignments with your contractual oath still. The hearing will allow for demonstration of change, as these are my neighbors, my people, deserving of unquestioned belonging. The crowd absorbed this masterclass in ethical stewardship. As Marcus concluded, officers, thank you for your diligence. Neighbors and media, please allow us to resume. Miss Slick Thompson. Expect formal notice for the hearing, and I advise securing counsel versed in municipal ethics. With that, the wedding recommenced at last, the arch framing Marcus and Elena as they exchanged vows before an expanded audience of 200, the Reverend intoning, in the face of trials, love endures and communities strengthen, while Karen retreated to her home, peering through curtains as celebrations unfolded without her. Her phone a barrage of reporter queries, client defections, and employee concerns. By nightfall, the story dominated broadcasts. Oakwood mayor's nuptials marred by neighbors' bias, contracts in jeopardy with her website crashing under traffic, Yelp halting reviews at 4,001 stars for discriminatory practices, setting the tone for the hearing days later, where the packed chambers heard 4 hours of testimony under Deputy Mayor Lisa Chen's gavel. Marcus recused for impartiality. Witnesses varied. Some decried Karen's words as harmful. Others recalled her past generosities, like sponsoring youth programs, with elderly resident Miss Vargas sharing, I've seen ugliness at joyful times before, but also redemption if hearts open. The verdict balanced mercy with accountability. Probation for 18 months, requiring Karen to complete 50 hours of cultural sensitivity workshops, submit monthly inclusion reports, and volunteer 100 hours at the Multicultural Center. As Deputy Chen explained, this fosters rehabilitation, ensuring vendors mirror our ethos. Oakwood's response extended systemically, launching the Harmony Initiative within weeks, mandatory bias training for contractors, anonymous reporting apps for disputes, and quarterly unity forums that celebrated cross-cultural stories. Karen's workshops, attended initially with reluctance, gradually chipped away at her defenses, exposing blind spots through interactive sessions where diverse facilitators shared personal impacts of similar encounters. Leading her to admit in a follow-up forum, I projected fears onto innocence. Intent doesn't excuse harm. Her business adapted too, hiring from underrepresented groups not out of mandate but genuine insight into overlooked talent, with her confiding to Marcus at a market encounter months later, those new team members are my best yet. I nearly lost it all to my own short-sightedness. The firm not only survived but earned a state diversity award, expanding contracts to 4 towns seeking ethical partners. Annual park barbecues, starting with Marcus and Elena's anniversary event catered gratis by Karen under oversight, drew hundreds for shared meals and dialogues that bridged divides, turning Elmwood Lane into a symbol of resilience. Oakwood gained acclaim in governance journals as a benchmark for turning crises into catalysts, with Marcus's ratings soaring to 87%. Years onward, at a bustling festival in the same park, Karen took the podium, her voice steady. I was my worst self that day, but this town's grace taught me, belonging is, for all I'm proof, change sticks with effort. The community thrived, property values up 14% from its inclusive rep, proving one outburst could spark enduring progress when met with structured empathy, policy innovation, and collective will to evolve beyond division into a tapestry of shared strength and mutual respect that inspired neighboring areas to adopt similar frameworks, ensuring the legacy of that fateful wedding extended far beyond Oakwood's borders as a real-world blueprint for reconciliation and renewal in an often fractured society.